Hey there. My name is Joe Meadows, and in this video, we're going to be talking about managing the Activities, Hazards, and Controls database in OpsLock. An incredibly powerful feature that allows you to have a more dynamic, more effective risk assessment for your employees, but is going to require a little bit from you to kind of keep it up to date. So with that, let's dive into it. If you have permission to manage the Activities, Hazards, and Controls database, you'll see that here on your company page, here near the bottom. So let's dive into it. Here you can see that we have a searchable list of all the activities, hazards, and controls in our system. If we want to see hazards, again, we just jump over here. If we want to see controls, we jump over here. The basic logic is that these are things that we're doing. These are the various hazards that we encounter in our workplace, and these are how we control those various hazards. So let's talk about the activities list. Here you can see a number of activities. We may have provided you with a baseline list of activities to kind of get you started, or you might have provided a list to us. So here we can see all those, a handful of high-level activities. We can also add new activities here. So let's say using a handsaw wood. Well, let's just say using a handsaw. So I could add that as an additional activity for our system. And you can see that that's been added to our list. So that becomes something that's available to our employees when they're going through the risk assessment process. If you want to learn more about the risk assessment process, I'd encourage you to watch that video. So in addition to keeping this list up to date and thorough, as a manager and as a supervisor, we also give you the ability to have your employees submit things so that they're making sure that the system they're using is reflective of the work that they do, and it's going to reduce the burden on you. So the way that they do that, and again, you can see this in the risk assessment video, is if they search for a term and it's not available either as an activity, a hazard, or a control, they have the ability to submit a new one to the system. If they submit a new one, that that activity, hazard, or control is restricted just to that single risk assessment. And the reason that we do that is to keep the system from getting polluted by a bunch of user-submitted data that may or may not be relevant. So it's going to allow them to submit it for that single risk assessment. But then it's going to take that user-entered term and it's going to submit it to you as a manager on this list as an unverified entry. So what this allows us to do, picking blueberries is a strange thing for somebody to submit, but we can go to that unverified entry, and when we press edit, we have the option to verify it. If we verify it, that's going to take this activity and make it available to all of our employees in all of our work sites as an activity that we acknowledge is part of our work. Additionally, what we're able to do is archive this activity if it's something that we either already have in the system, maybe under a slightly different name, and maybe we want to update that name to capture the variation here. Or, in this case, again, somebody's just submitted something silly, we can remove that and just make sure that it's not going to affect the experience for the rest of our users. So that's how we kind of can add things to any of these lists. And again, you can have unverified reports for activities, hazards, or controls. People can submit any of them. So once we have those submissions in place, I want to talk a little bit about the kind of advanced features here. So basically, we think it's important that you not only capture the activities, hazards, and controls that your employees face, but you also help them to make smarter decisions. And the way that we help you, or the way that we enable you to help your employees to make smarter decisions, is by giving you this ability to curate relationships between activities and hazards and between hazards and controls. So the way that works, we'll use entering a confined space as an example of an activity. If we go to edit, what we're able to add is what are the hazards associated with this activity, as well as the likelihood of each hazard. So here, I'll just remove this one and I'll add it again. So we can see that we have a number of various hazards, and you can see likelihood underneath them. Again, we can archive these, we can add new ones. So let's add asphyxiation again, which is certainly a concern when you enter a confined space. So assuming we've entered added no controls, how likely is this hazard when we enter a confined space? I would say it's, my professional opinion, it's possible. Not in every case, but it's certainly something we want to be concerned about. So now what we're able to do is create, specific relationships. When you enter a confined space, asphyxiation is possible. So curating these things is really important, because now when an employee selects entering a confined space on a risk assessment, we're going to present them with all these hazards that they need to be thoughtful about. And then the employee is going to be able to say, oh, absolutely, that's something that I want to add to my risk assessment. And they can select and verify those hazards to help us get a little bit smarter as we go. So that's the relationship between activities and hazards. Additionally, if we go to the next step of this flow, so again, now we're looking at the hazards list. Here we can get a little bit deeper. So if I click on asphyxiation, that was the one that we just added, and I edit this one, what we're able to say is, what is the potential impact of this hazard without control measures? So what we're able to say is, again, across various metrics, what's our thing? And I'm going to say that the impact of asphyxiation is extreme. You're going to be looking at fatalities if it's not mitigated at all. So that helps us to calculate a risk score, because we entered the likelihood of this hazard taking place. And if the employee verifies that this hazard is in place, we're able to calculate a potential risk. What we're also able to do, and again, I'll just remove this, a few of these so I can add them back again, is add the possible controls for this hazard. So what this means is, if an employee has identified that asphyxiation is a concern for their job, what are the various controls that they could put in place? And additionally, are there any of those controls that we are actually going to require that they put in place? So let's kind of go through that process. So here we can say, if a work permit is required, we can add that. Additionally, we can add behavioral controls as a requirement. So let me show you what it looks like if we add a work permit as a requirement. So I'm going to say in a confined space entry, permit is going to be required here. And what that's going to do is it's going to have a moderate reduction to the risk by introducing a certain degree of procedural control. So we save that, and now we can see that we have a work permit as a required control here. Additionally, what we're able to do is add a control here, and I'll just kind of pick mentorship from experienced personnel is not required, but it's also going to have a moderate reduction on the risk of this task. So that's how you'd create a relationship between a hazard and a control. An additional note, just while we're on this page, you can see here that we have these various report options. And what this is telling us is how often has this been reported, or this hazard been reported in an observation. So it helps you to kind of see what are the things that our employees are being exposed to the most. Okay, finally, controls. Again, this one's actually the simplest. So if we go into here in controls, all it's going to show us, there's actually no action required. It just shows us what are the hazards that are associated with this. And it's a good check to kind of go through here and just make sure that everything feels correct and that you have a complete list. So that's how you manage your activities, hazards, and controls list. Hopefully this is helpful. Again, what this is going to allow us to do is come through our risk assessment, and then based on what we select, so if we select that entering a confined space, those relationships are what going to create this nice, dynamic, suggested list that's going to help us understand what's going on here. So now we can see we have all these requirements. We're required to do a confined space permit, And that's all guaranteed, so you know things are done the right way, making an easier experience for your employees and giving you more peace of mind. So hopefully this is helpful. If you do have any questions, please let us know, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much.